Hi everybody, welcome to the first video in a new series we're doing on frequently asked questions about probates, wills, trusts, and estates in the state of Texas. In this video I'm going to talk about one of the most frequently asked questions we get, which is, do I need to write a will, and what is a will? To understand the nature of a will, let's first talk about what happens to a person's property when they die here in the state of Texas. Now, the Texas State Legislature has passed a series of laws called the intestacy laws, and they're found in Chapter 201 of the Texas Estates Code. And they dictate what happens to someone's property when they die. I'm going to give you an example of how these laws work. Let's say we have a guy named Bob, and Bob has a wife and a son, but he can't stand his wife and a son. He also has a brother named Dave, and he adores Dave. Dave is his best bud. So one day, Bob is standing in a room in a stadium full of 10,000 people. And Bob says, when I die, I don't want anything to go to my wife and my child. I want everything to go to my best buddy, my brother Dave. And then Bob drops dead. Now at that point, we might think that Dave gets everything because Bob had 10,000 witnesses. That's not what happens. Under the Texas Estates Code, everything goes to Bob's wife. She gets everything. Why? Because that's the law. Just like we have laws about traffic, we have criminal laws, we have laws about what happens to a person's property. And irrespective of Bob's wishes, which is that he wanted everything to go to Dave, everything here goes to his wife, because the Texas Estates Code says that if a person is married to a spouse and has children with that spouse, then upon his death, everything he owns goes to the surviving spouse. Now there is a way in Bob's lifetime that he could change that outcome. And standing in front of a stadium telling 10,000 people what you want is not the right way to change that outcome. What Bob can do is he can give a request to the court and to the government saying, hey, when I die, don't enforce the laws that the Texas State Legislature wrote. Tear that page out of the law books. And instead, use this series of rules that I wrote to govern how my property is going to be distributed upon my death. Now, if you think about it, that's bizarre. In what other area of law can you do this? In probate, you can write your own rules and ask the court to enforce them, but you can't do that in traffic court or criminal court. Believe me, I've tried. It does not work. But we can do it in probate. And that request to the court to say, hey, don't enforce the rules that are on the law books. Enforce the rules I wrote as if they were law. That's what a will is. A will is that request and that list of rules that a person writes to avoid having the government distribute their property upon their death. And it is the only way to change the outcome under the Texas Estates Code of your probate assets is to leave a will. Now, if a person doesn't leave a will and dies without a will, then the government is going to come in and is going to decide how your property is to be distributed. And that's going to be done through a process called intestacy, and it might involve what's called the determination of heirship, a process to determine who the heirs are. These processes eat up the assets of the estate. And by the way, when I say estate, I don't just mean real estate. When we use the term estate here, we mean anything a person owned at the time of his death, whether it's bank accounts, clothing, any property a person had at the time of his death, that's his estate. The cost involved when a person dies without a will of dealing with tying up all the loose ends is much, much higher than when a person leaves a will. When a person leaves a will, it's relatively inexpensive and it's a fast process and it's easy on the family. Without a will, it can be a very complicated process. So the two advantages to leaving a will is, number one, it guarantees that your wishes and of what you want, your legacy, and how you want your property handled, it guarantees those wishes are going to be enforced by law. And it's also going to save expenses against your estate and time and stress on your family, because it makes the process go much more easy and much more smoothly. So if you have any questions about putting together a will or an estate plan to ensure a smooth transition of your property and your legacy, give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about it.